students, today we will learn the basics of cognitive behavior therapy for social anxiety. Before I proceed to the class, I would like to tell you that I have divided this particular topic into two sections. In first section, we will cover some facts and figures about CBT for social anxiety, and in the second section, we will cover some other pointers and components of CBT for social anxiety. And in the second section, we will also know few sample how we proceed from one session to another session. Before that, I would also like to tell you that I assume that before I take this session, you all know the basic model of cognitive behavior therapy. This session will cover the basics of CBT, and I will focus on therapeutic alliance, how to do agenda setting, what needs to be covered in the detailed history part of it, and the themes and contents what we need to include in psychoeducation section of CBT for social anxiety. And I would also detail out a little bit about the process of how to conduct the therapy, and the last one will cover the social anxiety focused the critical information that we would be needing to include to form the case formulation, and I would also focus on the questioning skills and how to proceed to guided discovery while doing CBT for social anxiety. As you all know, in comparison to counseling, CBT, that is cognitive behavior therapy, focuses largely on building the therapeutic relationship between the client or the patient and the therapist. And if you look at the history of CBT, Beck and his colleagues in 1979, they focus a lot on how you need to know that the therapeutic alliance or therapeutic relationship has been in place or not, and what is the quality of therapeutic relationship. And therefore, they focused more on working alliance, which is also known as therapeutic relationship or therapeutic alliance. So, let us not be confused between the terminologies. Working alliance, therapeutic alliance and therapeutic relationship, they are used synonymously. Now, I will move on to the essential elements that are to be covered while you focus on therapeutic relationship. The first part is you have to be in a very non-judgmental relationship with your client. And the second one is that whatever the client says to you, you have to take it with a very much empathetic way, so that the patient or the client understands that you are empathetic with whatever problems or whatever issues the client is discussing with you. And I also hope that while doing the counseling skills course, you also know what are the good counseling skills or interpersonal skills. So these are the three main elements of building the therapeutic relationship between a client and a therapist during the cognitive behavior therapy for social anxiety. And while building this therapeutic relationship, we need to focus more on the language that we speak. And whatever conversation goes on between the client and the therapist, the language should be very simple. It needs to have a lot of clarity. So clear message is very much essential, and again it has to be a very direct message. So it has to be simple, it has to be having clarity, and it needs to be very direct in your approach. There should be very small sentences but very direct sentences. And yes, you need to take care of the fact that you should not say something that can be offending for the client to hear or to know. And yes, whenever the client discusses something with you, especially the problems, the issues, the symptoms, then you need to be very non-judgmental and also very unbiased and unprejudiced in your approach while you respond back to the clients. And another important issue is that when you use language and keep focusing on the simplicity, clarity, specificity and the direct message and non-offending message, you also need to take care of the client's age and the appropriate language that you need to speak to the client, so that client understands what you say and it makes sense to the client whatever you are saying. Now we are coming to know some little aspects of listening, why listening is very important in cognitive behavior therapy. And when we say listening, it is similar to the listening skills that we know in counseling skills, and your listening has to be very active. The client must come to know that yes, you are interested in whatever the client is discussing or sharing with you. And again, when you speak in a very empathetic language, your listening has to also be very empathetic, and you should not interfere or interrupt quite often. And because if you interrupt quite often, that will distract the flow of the client. So it has to be done in a way so that you interrupt as less as possible. And in addition to that, you also should not use mobile phone, you should not talk to somebody else, you should not do something in between, so that the flow is not broken while discussing with you. And that should be very non-obstructing kind of thing. And while doing this, your entire focus should be maintaining the eye contact between you and your client, and your non-verbal body language, whether you are nodding, whether you are smiling, whether you are asking a question in form of hand movements or eye contact. So those body language should be very appropriate while you are building the relationship with a client. And whenever there is a doubt, you are not able to understand what the client is saying to you, please clarify. And whatever is your understanding, before closing it, you need to also summarize and ask whether you have rightly received the message that the client has given to you. When the client says yes, you have rightly understood it, that means the message is complete and the conversation between two is quite clear and direct, and then the therapeutic relationship is in the process of building in a very good way. And however, at the end of the building of the therapeutic relationship, it is also required that you need to take consent from the participant, or let's say the client or the patient. And consent is very much required before we move ahead. Although some might ask me a question, why the patient has come to you or the client has come to you, why you need to take a consent. But however, in CBT we need to take consent, unlike the counseling sessions that we do with the clients. So that is very important in our therapeutic relationship. And while building the therapeutic relationship, you first need to introduce yourself and take a brief introduction from the client regarding where he is from, he or she is from, what is his age, his marital status, and all those things. Very basic, not in a detailed way, but very basic. And of course, after you introduce yourself and the patient introduces himself or herself, you need to find out what brings the patient here. What is the purpose of the client and the patient to come to you? And when that is cleared and you also reply back that what you have understood why the client has come to you, then go to check what is the insight of the patient regarding the illness and the symptomatology that the patient is experiencing. After that, you just experience what the patient is saying and how to proceed further. Then the next step would be to take a little brief history about patient's previous experience of any kind of therapy or counseling sessions or any kind of pharmacological treatment. And while beginning the therapeutic session and building the therapeutic session, it is also very important for a CBT therapist to observe, and it has to be very active observation. And you need to observe the thinking pattern and the behaviors, what the patient is saying. If somebody is accompanying the patient, then also you need to observe the conversation that is going between the patient and his caregiver if he or she is present. And while discussing while you are observing the insight about the illness and illness related behaviors, your active observation, we call it clinical observation, and about the psychomotor activities, Everything is very important, and these information are very important while you are thinking that you will go ahead with CBT for social anxiety for this particular client, to build the case formulation for that particular patient. And of course, if necessary, you need to give very genuine feedback about your understanding of patient's issues and problems and symptoms. And during doing all this process one by one, you also need to document whatever the patient is saying, whatever you are observing very quickly, and you can use short form or long form as per your conveniences, but documentation is definitely important. Let us know how to set the agenda for CBT for social anxiety, and while doing agenda setting, we will introduce CBT approach to the clients, and then we will also explain how CBT is going to help to recover from the symptoms or the experiences that the patient is facing. While doing this, we will first introduce the CBT process, and within this process we will explain the structure and the format of the CBT, like how many sessions it will continue for, and then what will be the duration of the CBT, whether it will be with an individual format or in a group format, that also we need to explain. And more importantly, we need to explain and set it right in the beginning what role the patient is going to play in the entire therapy. Here we share the accountability of recovery from the symptoms equally almost with client and the therapist. And while doing this, we also mention and highlight the importance of assessment and the symptomatology that the patient is facing. Again, in addition to that, we also inform the client that we need to take a detailed history from the patient, which will include in very detailed way about the patient and his family, his situation, and the treatment details. And while doing this, again I focus on the summarizing of whatever you have understood from the client's perspective. And while doing this, you also ensure that you convince the clients that what is going in between you and the client, that will be totally confidential, and without client's permission the information will not be shared with anyone else. And during doing this, you also answer some of the fears, some of the queries and expectations that the client may having to clarify from you. And while taking detailed history, we need to take history regarding birth and developmental history, age, education detail, occupation detail of the patient and the family members, marital status of the patient, etc. And in addition to that, it is also important to look for the family history of mental illnesses and family financial status and the living conditions, the status of chronic illness in the family, chronic illness of the patient, domestic violence if that is existing within the family, whether the family has faced some kind of sudden death or suicide, whether there is a history of alcohol abuse in the family. As far the client is concerned, it is important to take a history of whatever adverse childhood experiences that the client has experienced during his growth and developmental age. For example, the history of bullying in school, history of substance use, whether the client is into some kind of substance use or not, clients having some kind of developmental disorder like specific learning disability or autistic features or attention deficit hyperactive disorder or any kind of conduct disorders, etc. Whether the childhood history suggests some kind of academic difficulties, that also needs to be noted down. In addition to that, while closing the history taking, we also need to know the status of medication and the history of medication for the specific problem that the client has come to you. Now let us come to understand what constitutes psychoeducation in CBT. Psychoeducation also is a very very important facet of CBT, because in counseling you would not focus more on psychoeducation. And while doing this, we start with what differences are there between social phobia and social anxiety. We will see it in detail in next slide. Now we will cover the contents of psychoeducation, and while doing this, what are the essential components that will clarify what the problem is or what the illness is. That is first illness theme, second is compliance to treatment, third is process of CBT and the rationale of the therapeutic time frame that the therapist is looking at, and importance of homework, because in CBT that is also important, that is a distinction between the counseling that is done in general. The CBT therapist gives some kind of homework to the clients to work on themselves and then come back with the feedback. And then again you have to summarize the current problems that is described by the client, and then you have to also set the goal, and while setting the goal you need to prioritize what needs to be addressed first and second and third. Similarly, that should be in a joint collaboration with the client. So anything that is set as the goals of the therapy, that has to be a joint and collaborative form, and the prioritization has to be done by the clients as much as possible. Now let us understand what is the difference between social anxiety and social phobia. As you know, social phobia, that is referred to the extreme fears of performing in front of somebody, or that's a very specific type of phobia that you experience in the public. Whereas social anxiety is more when you face problems while doing conversation in one-to-one, or while doing the experience of facing the public. And especially let us say some examples, that when somebody is presenting a term paper or a PowerPoint presentation detailing out the work performance that has been done, or let's say while you are eating in a restaurant, or you are using some public places, public restrooms, public transportation, etc. and etc. And especially the focus is on your consciousness or the patient's consciousness while facing the public, the crowd. He may be knowing, he may not be knowing, but the main problem to face the public in a common place. And how does it develop? When you say social anxiety, it develops out of excessive self-consciousness, and this becomes combined with a lack of self-confidence and your self-esteem, and this fear of making a mistake in public, that bothers you the most. And this particular fear, that becomes a kind of catastrophic experience for the patient, and the patient thinks that if I do this, people will judge me, I will feel embarrassed in such situations, they will also spread the message, and then it will be very difficult for me to face this particular crowd again. And when it comes to social anxiety, it is more about referring to the fear and the anxiety experience before and during the conversation, and the other way we can see that it's a direct social interaction what you face on one-to-one basis. While the social phobia, it is basically the fears and insecurity that you face or experience while you connect to a public performance. Again, whereas social anxiety disorder in many ways that has replaced social phobia as a category in psychiatric diagnosis. However, it also incorporates the symptoms of both social anxiety and social phobia under a kind of broad diagnosable symptoms, and that broad umbrella is now known as social anxiety disorders. Now, since we have understood the process of building the relationship, that is therapeutic relationship, and how to set the agenda, how to fix the goals, and what is the difference between social anxiety and social phobia, now it is time to make the patient or the client understand that how CBT is going to help the client to overcome the symptoms or the negative experiences. Now, CBT teaches the client to identify specific thoughts, emotions and behaviors that the client is feeling, and while experiencing such thoughts, emotions and behaviors, the client feels very distressed. So from there they can begin to explore these feelings and the reframing of these thoughts, which with the help of the therapist, the client modifies. The thoughts and beliefs are modified, and that is the first point of understanding how CBT is going to help the client. And while coming to social anxiety, it is basically that involves a desire for acceptance. The patient or the clients generally have a very dire need of being accepted publicly, and so when you want to be accepted by the public, and you also want them to like you, so that creates a kind of anxiety in you, and every time you are worried about the positive impression that the crowd will develop for you, and at the same time also you hold a very deep conviction that if I do some kind of mistake, so then the opinion of the public or opinion of the person I am talking about, so they will make a very negative impression about me. So that worries the patient a lot, and this basically the negative attention that the patient is focusing on, or the anticipated criticism that the patient is focusing on, that creates anxiety in the patient, and again at the end of it, it affects the performance of the patient. Fear of acceptance and people's non-judgmental impression on you, that results in avoidance of the interaction, and when that is not possible, you find yourself fixing it on what people are thinking about you and how they really feel about you in a negative way. These anxious thoughts can prompt sweating, blushing and nausea or dizziness in you, and you might also have trouble making eye contact or speaking loud enough for others to hear. Now you need to elicit the detailed history of the illness, which includes how did the illness start, when did it start, what form it started with, and what was the incident when it started, what were the symptoms at that point of time, duration of these symptoms existed at that point of time, the method the patient or family members used to resolve the symptoms, etc. and etc. And the number of episodes and the associated symptoms that are also to be noted about, specific people, person, condition, family history, comorbid illness, everything should come under the detailed history part. Now you need to elicit the details about the first episode or experience. Now you can ask the client to detail his first experience of social anxiety and what had happened with him when he experienced it for the first time. If family members or caregiver is available, you can corroborate the incident from the family members. Now you need to probe regarding 5 factors that were very essential at that point of time to understand the illness for the first episode. First factor is presenting complaints, second is predisposing factors of the illnesses, then the third is precipitating factors of the illness, and then what are the maintaining factors and protective factors that the patient is having. You need to share the underlying assumption of social anxiety with the client. While questioning the client, you need to take care of your tone, pitch, voice, selection of words that are used by you, and your voice, your questioning style should not be threatening or challenging for the client. And while doing CBT and beginning with CBT, you will hear much about the Socratic question style, and this is nothing but checking the reality then and there. You need to ask the client that what is he thinking now and what thoughts are coming to his mind while discussing all these issues, and what are the automatic thoughts that are coming to his mind, and what about if you try to modify these particular thinking that are coming to his mind, and what about checking and modifying these thinking that the negative pattern of thinking that the patient is facing. Now coming to the W questions, there are 3 segments of W questions. One is logical, that you need to ask, can you explain how does it logically flow? I am not able to understand how logical it is. So can you please explain it? Then next time you may ask that, can you establish some kind of evidence How are you so convinced? How are you so sure that this has happened in this way or this has happened due to this particular problem? And then the third one is that you can ask a pragmatic question that the client has to explain how this particular thought or belief that the client is holding, that is benefiting or not benefiting to the client. At the end of it, you need to focus on many open-ended questions that you need to throw it to the clients, asking about what options are available, what solutions are available, what are the other perspectives that the client can give it to you, and keep it very open. And you also need to discuss what methods or what techniques have worked for the client and what techniques that went against the client. And the entire objective of questioning and questioning different issues related to the illness, that is specially to help the clients to identify, examine and work on the unhelpful thoughts and beliefs. And while doing this, Pedasky's work is very important, and generally the focus is on the series of questions and the use of words that to elicit the patient's experience in a very wholesome way. So the questions like, what if this happens? What if you fail? What if they don't consider you good? If this happens, then what will you do? What do you do when you see some kind of body language that is not positive? So these are some of the questionings that you need to ask to the clients. But while doing so, and while doing Socratic questions, giving open-ended questions, we need to give time to the clients to think and frame their answers so that they are clear what they are saying to you. And the role of the therapist at that point of time is to guide the patient to discover problems, cause and effect relationship, alternative perspectives or methods to for a better outcome, and the newer interpretation of clients' experiences. However, you need to check the clients whenever the client is going out of the question, out of the theme. So you have to bring back the client to the theme again and again. While doing so, you follow the guided discovery principles that we have already discussed, and after the guided discovery is over, towards the end of it, we can do a free listing of patient's difficulties or dysfunctions, and then we can ask the client to prioritize the list, to make a list and give it ranking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we need to fix goal. I hope you know SMART stands for specific, measurable, and then achievable, and then relevant, and then time bound goals or objectives that needs to be done jointly with the client. You need to discuss the advantage and disadvantage of taking up the goals from easy to difficult or difficult to easy, so that the client is able to rank the difficulties or dysfunctions. And you can set one goal or many goals for different problems. Now we have come to the end of first part of CBT for social anxiety. We covered the basics of CBT, what to do in therapeutic alliance, what not to do in therapeutic alliance, how to do agenda setting, how to take detailed history, various components of therapeutic alliance, agenda setting and detailed history, the components of psychoeducation, the process of conducting the guided therapy, that is guided discovery, and then of course the social anxiety focus critical information, the necessary information, and the questioning styles and how to proceed in the guided discovery. So thank you all, and we'll see you in the next lecture. So good day.